The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro.
A big digital welcome to Wim Stoop. Wim, I am so glad to have you on The Digital Analyst.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, John. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I think the last time I saw you was probably Big Data London, and that's been a while. So it's good to be together again.
Absolutely, yes. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
I'm going to jump right in. Our topic today is this concept of the data fabric, and it's a little bit elusive, I think, for a lot of people. So we're gonna help educate our audience on what it is, why they're important, what the benefits are, and I'm gonna let you kick it off, because we've had conversations, and I think we both agree that data fabrics right now are more important than they have been in the past. What is it that is driving that importance? Maybe start with a little, like a short definition of what a data fabric is as well.
Okay. All right, data fabric. Let's start with the definition. For me, a data fabric in the plainest possible English language is an architectural approach that you can use in order to truly understand your data from a business perspective, so that you can use that insight in order to govern and secure the data correctly. But then I think the bigger question is, why are these data fabrics so important? Well, going back decades, organizations know that good data governance leads to better business value, higher business value from the data that you have at your disposal. Knowing which is the right data to use and knowing which is the not so right data to use is very important when you need to do analyses on it, create dashboards and reports. But the reason why I think it has been driven to a point is that we need to use more of our data, because AI is demanding that we use all of our data. I think before AI, it was already good practice to just analyze your data, because every piece of data contains a nugget of value. So why not use all your data? But now AI, it works better with all of the data that we have at our disposal in order to make better predictions, to give better answers, to get agentic AI to work better. So this has really accelerated the need for organizations to know and understand their data, which has really driven the need and a refocus on data fabrics.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, especially since we're in this agentic revolution right now. I mean, AI agents are multiplying at an insane rate. I just had a conversation with Sean Rogers a few weeks ago, and he was telling me that he met with a CIO that has 20,000 AI agents, and it's a bank with 20,000 agents running around the organization right now. And all of those agents need good data, not just data. They need good, accurate data to be able to function and do the kinds of automation and autonomous kinds of things that they're doing. So it's not just the generative AI or AI in general. These agents make a data fabric even more important.
Absolutely. And tie on to that, you mentioned a financial or highly regulated industry. Look also at the compliance requirements that organizations of that caliber have. It is data privacy regulation, it is industry regulation, it is self-imposed regulation of what we can do and where we can or cannot move our data. All that requires you to know what you have in the first place, to have that inventory of all your various data sources. The big challenge is that before data fabrics, trying to do this in a manual fashion was always very, very hard. It's very labor intensive. And it without a shadow of doubt, it always turned into this project. We're going to do a data governance project, and the project starts and we'll do it and we get some better insight, yes. But after that, the project goes away. You need a technology, you need an architecture that can actually be always on to unlock not just all of the data sources that you currently have, but also all the data sources that you're going to have and all the data that is going to be generated. Doing that at scale, it truly requires technology. And what I think now also is a benefit of AI, AI can help us accelerate getting to grips with our data.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just a thing of the past that people used to do that. That's what most companies, I think, in my opinion, they're still doing that. We've been on a modernization kick for the last 20 years, and modernization happens very slowly. And so most people don't have a data fabric architecture. And the beauty of a data fabric architecture is the concept of a fabric, right? A single fabric where you have access to all of the data. You're doing all of the data engineering. You're doing governance in one place. You have all of the metadata stored centrally, so you know where the data is and where it's come from and who's using it and who has access. And it takes away all of these integrations and technical debt that you normally have. But unfortunately, most people don't have that fabric architecture yet. So for our listeners' sake, what's the motivation? What's the potential benefit of putting this fabric, this data fabric together? What kind of outcomes can they expect?
Right. So as you rightfully said, organizations that they're switching onto it. I think individual departments and teams would already have done things that go towards a data fabric without even calling it a data fabric. They just knew that for what they needed to do, their use case, they needed to implement a way of knowing and understanding the data, of securing and governing their data. But what that leads to, if you take such a fragmented approach, that you have these islands of perfect data governance and data security inside an organization, which now that we need to get overarching use cases, which AI promotes, you can't work in islands. You need to have everything connected across the whole organization. So the benefits then become very nice and easy. It is, first of all, you get away from the silos, you get away from the fragmentation of data being secured and governed, not just in individual use cases, but also in individual infrastructures, because that oftentimes was a big challenge with organizations as well. I know and understand my data that I have within my data center. When it comes to cloud, maybe not so much. That's another team's remit. Also, just getting to grips with your data, doing good data governance, it lets you know and understand your data, and that drives business value. Now you can find the right data to use for the right use cases, to make the right decisions, not outdated data, not lower quality data. So business value is innate from doing implementing a data fabric. But now, indeed, as we're looking at AI, generative AI, and AI agents, you cannot do this without having complete insight into any and all of the enterprise data that you have. So the value there is, well, you can now do your AI projects, because as some other analysts predict or point out, about 60% of all AI projects will fail in 2026. Because there's no AI-ready data. The data is simply not at a state to support the innovation. So in terms of the value and benefits, there is very standard, very basic benefit of knowing and understanding your data, but there is even more benefit and value from being able to innovate and being able to take advantage of AI.
Yeah, you know what? One other thing I would throw in there is that within the data fabric, you're adding real-time data into the mix, so that you're now in the fabric, you have all of your data that's at rest, and you have all of your data streams all coming together under the same thing. And in the agentic world, it's that real-time data with the context that comes from the data at rest that drives the whole agentic world. You can't have AI agents running around doing autonomous tasks and acting autonomously on behalf of humans and on behalf of applications if you don't have that real-time element governed with the data that is at rest. I think, and that's a huge benefit to moving into the agentic, which has all kinds of additional benefits for the customers.
True, absolutely true. Again, agentic AI has driven it to a point, but indeed, being able to deal with real-time and streaming data even before you get to AI is critical for organizations. You want to get as close as possible to not just getting the data, but also being able to take decisions on the data. So even being able to do streaming analytics, but streaming and real-time data is a very different beast. We as organizations for years have been working very well and very easy with data that's delivered to us in batches and overnight updates. But this real-time world is a different world altogether. It requires a separate set of tools, a separate set of engines. I oftentimes think of it as a platform in a platform. But yes, if you're thinking about data fabrics, and you're thinking about some of the characteristics that a data fabric needs to have, right at the bottom when it comes to what are the systems I can connect to, this should not be the static, not just the static systems that I currently have, my databases, my CRM systems. It should also be my real-time and streaming data sources, whether that's for IoT, whether that's for fraud detection, whether that's for online transactions. The use cases are near endless, but they all require and they all work better, get faster to the business decision with real-time data.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw in a shameless plug for Cloudera, because one of the things I love about the Cloudera offering is that you have a variety of different platforms that all come together in your single offering. You have NiFi for the edge and for large files that are feeding AI. You have Kafka, enterprise scale Kafka. You've got Flink. You've got your data flow product, right? You kind of have all of those pieces to make real-time triggers for AI a possibility. And they all function together as one. And feel free to jump in. You're the expert on it. I get to see it from a distance.
You need all the ingredients to cook many different things. And although real time is just as important in a data fabric as it is in creating a real time data lakehouse, as it is to be able to feed the agents, there are many components in the whole of the Cloudera platform to contribute to that. It starts with ingesting data, real time, as well as streaming, as well as batch, engineering data, storing data, visualizing data, querying data, all of it tied together with complete, and I say complete in a very specific way, complete data security and governance, because it needs to not just tie all these components together, but it also needs to work on all of the infrastructures consistently where you want to deploy these elements, so that you can either serve your traditional business of generating dashboards and doing BI, or be able to drive that data that is now trusted data, trusted analytics, but also trusted data, trusted AI, drive it to AI. But again, AI is not just one thing. It's not just I pick one AI interface and that's it. AI is equally a life cycle, is equally a platform from development to training your models or contextualizing your models to bringing them into production, to be able to use inferencing, to optimizing and monitoring and feeding it all the way back in. So all of these components come together in one platform, Cloudera's platform, Cloudera's hybrid platform for data and AI. And you can do many things with it. One of them is a data fabric, as we're talking about here today. Another is being able to deploy a data lakehouse. Another is being able to focus on creating data products. And then we're talking a little bit more in the direction of a data mesh, which is a paradigm looking at creating domain-specific data products, which are all components coming together in order to serve the business as a whole. And you need all of these ingredients for it to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's drill down a little bit, because you and I just worked together on a pretty extensive definition of the data fabric. And it was really fun to dig down into the details. So talk a little bit about what exactly in detail is a data fabric? What are the different components? How do they work together? And what is it that makes a good data fabric? Let's drill down a little bit.
I mean, I think it's a layer cake. There are many different elements that you need in a data fabric to make a good data fabric, and everything centers on metadata management, metadata services, being able to provide a data catalog, to actively manage the metadata that you have, to do data governance, to do data security, to be able to also leverage AI in order to perform any and all of these functions. But this metadata layer, that central layer, it needs to somehow get its insight, get its information. It needs to be able to connect to various data stores. And as we discussed, those can be real time, they can be streaming, they can be traditional. So it's databases, it's CRM systems, it's operational databases, but also for any kind of data. Because over the years, we've been very good at dealing with structured data. Databases and enterprise data warehouses are full of them, but more and more we're getting to semi-structured and completely unstructured data. You need to be able to connect and bring in that data in whatever shape or form that it comes. But to be able to pull it out, there are different approaches that you can take. Either you want to bring out the data, copy it across into a new central store, or more and more we see organizations take zero copy approaches where the data remains exactly where it is. Using the metadata services, we discover the metadata, we discover whatever structure there is, we can associate it with business concepts, but we leave it exactly where it is. And only when we need it in a federated manner will we bring it together. So the data stores and the data services, they make that we can fill this metadata layer, we can fill this data catalog, and we can make the, more often than not, the metadata findable, usable, activated, so that we can expose this to the users, but in a safe and compliant manner. Only once you know and understand what your data represents, the role it plays in the organization, and also the sensitivity that it has, the regulations that apply to it, you know who can access it, who can't access it, in what form they can access it, and where the data, if it needs to move, can or cannot live. We're based in Europe. GDPR is very strong here from a data privacy regulation perspective. Data privacy regulated data oftentimes cannot live in a public cloud that is hosted or managed by another country. So we need to have that kind of rigor around it. But making the data available, making the data findable, making the data usable, that then leads to the subsequent step. Now you have the data ready. Now you can do something with it. And that something can be the very traditional BI, the visualization. But because you now have good metadata, you can actually use natural language, again, supported by AI, in order to ask natural language queries to your data to get the right data found, the right data visualized. You can visualize it. You can feed it into any and all of the systems that you need and know and understand, including now using that trusted data to do your traditional AI, maybe create your own model, train your own model, to contextualize your large language model with some of the data that you have, or your small language model, or to feed AI agents, to drive agentic AI. So there is both a bringing the data in, and oftentimes it's fanning the data in from the various sources that I have, but more often than not, it's fanning the metadata in, and then being able to fan the data out so that it can be usable. The right data is usable for the various processes and systems that need it.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, the metadata becomes the lifeblood of the data fabric. You can't have a data fabric without that rich set of metadata that includes technical metadata, all of the information about the data, the lineage, the location, the privacy, all of the technical data that is kept about data as it's coming from sources, right? In many different places. And a lot of times metadata speaks different language. So the data fabric brings it together into a single place, and then layers on top of it the business metadata, the semantics, the definitions of the business. So a business person can actually speak business language, not have to understand all of the technical information down below, and get the answers that they want specific to the business decisions that they're making in a moment. I mean, this is really powerful. From my perspective, not only can you not do a data fabric without that metadata layer, but anybody that's not investing in that metadata layer right now, they're going to get left behind. I mean,
Oh,
there's an
yeah.
urgency from my perspective to do that work with the metadata and to do it now. What's your perspective on that?
I absolutely agree. If nothing else, by indeed providing this very rich metadata layer, you gave the example of a business user can now ask a question of the data and not have to know the intricacies of what's stored where and how to bring it together. Because if you can do that, it means that rather than the relatively small group of people that you have that can write SQL or that can create dashboards, anyone and everyone in your organization that can now formulate a question can start to contribute to teasing value out of the data that you have. You've already got the data. It's already sitting somewhere. The more value you can create from it, the better it is. So from that small group of people, every single one of your employees, within reason, can contribute to the value creation from that data. And that is without even going to AI. That is a tremendous advantage that organizations already get by having rich metadata and making it available.
Well, we always talk about kind of the business user down, right? Because the business user has been the odd man out. They had to go to the data analyst or the business analyst to get help with answering questions that they were trying to ask. But
Correct.
this combination of technical and business metadata also helps the entire data team, because now they suddenly can ask questions of the business metadata, of the semantics, to better understand the kinds of analytics that the business needs without having to wait for the business to do it. And because they have access to all the data, they can produce and push insight to the business in ways that they could never do it before. So it's not just access from the business, the productivity and the understanding that the data fabric gives to the entire data team is invaluable.
And here is a very interesting thing. AI is something that many organizations want to go and create in order to either use it internally to optimize processes or to deliver interesting AI chatbots to their customers. But I think organizations can very quickly, with very little effort, leverage AI in order to exactly streamline those processes. If indeed you know the structure of your data, you know the business glossary term that data represents, that then also tells you something about what is valid data, what is invalid data. For example, a field may be called ABC123, yet the business metadata tells you that this is a customer age in years. That means that negative numbers probably are invalid and numbers greater than 120 are probably invalid too. You can now start to leverage AI to crawl your data at scale to highlight and potentially fix some of those data issues and challenges. And being able to add that AI component into a data fabric, that is the crux for organizations to be able to now unlock their data sources at scale, where previously we had the human as the blocking factor. How fast can we go through the data? How quickly can we figure out and classify and characterize and govern and secure the data? Not that we're taking the human completely out of the loop, by no means, but to get AI to accelerate those processes so we can unlock more of our data faster, so we can leverage our data faster, and we can get to traditional analytics or creating that AI faster. That is now a differentiation that organizations can benefit from in leveraging Fabric.
Yeah, well, you have all of these people that have been sitting on the edge wanting to do data cataloging, right? Because they understand the value of it. But the effort behind it traditionally has been more than most organizations could invest. It's not just the money, it's the time and effort to populate the catalog. But I think what you're saying is that a lot of that now can be automated. So there's no reason to not enrich your metadata from the catalog perspective now, because it doesn't require as much effort as it would have 5 years ago.
Correct. And as we all know, we're generating more data, not less. So the problem of trying to do this with humans is only going to get bigger. This is the way. This is the only way that we have to try and stay ahead of it, to try and stay on top of it. My excitement makes me tumble my words.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw in a more recent thing. I mean, the word context is being thrown around. It was huge at the, we just had the Gartner conference, and that was the big theme, and everybody was talking about it. I was just on a briefing with a vendor who was telling me that they had unified context. And to them, that meant across all of the application. Well, to me, it meant across all applications and all data. When I drilled down, what I found out is, well, they're an application vendor. They have unified application context. But I think what you're talking about in the data fabric, by bringing all of that together, you actually create a context so that every decision that is being made, it's now possible to understand how it impacts the rest of the organization, because you have the context of the entire business within the data fabric, both technically and from business perspective. I mean, the value of that is beyond anything that we've been able to create in the past decade.
Absolutely right. The prerequisite for it is that context needs to be without fault. It cannot leave any application, it cannot leave any store, it cannot leave any infrastructure out. And that has been a big challenge for many providers of data systems and analytics, because they typically work within the infrastructures and within the data systems that they support. Yet any organization, both by design or by accident, ends up with this hybrid and heterogeneous landscape of data systems and infrastructures. And creating this context is key, but you have to make sure that you can consistently apply this context, regardless of where the data, regardless of where the applications operate and run. And that is one of the things where Cloudera is uniquely different from just about anyone else out there that does data and AI. We provide exactly the same functionality, the same services, the same analytical services on any infrastructure. But what consistently ties it together is the data security and governance. And we do that not just within our own platform. Of course we would, like it's our own platform. We do this outside our platform as well. We provide organizations the complete enterprise landscape of any and all of their data and metadata. Because even though we would love everything to happen in Cloudera, organizations have many different systems and applications that all play together in order to deliver the use cases and to create the value. We provide them with the insight into metadata across all of these systems, either bringing it into Cloudera's platform, or also quite happily sharing the data beyond the Cloudera platform. The open data lakehouse, the sharing capability that exists there, is a key capability for organizations to be able to truly leverage the data that they have on any and all of the systems, so that there is a single source of truth. And that single source of truth is more often than not now the metadata rather than the data itself.
Wow. So you kind of touched on some of the enterprise capabilities necessary for the data fabric. Can you elaborate on that a little more? There's buyers out there trying to figure out, where do I go to get the pieces to put together this data fabric architecture? But it's not just the pieces parts. It's not just the components. It's not just the metadata. If a company's going to run their organization on this and have agents running based on the data that's coming out of it, elaborate on the full set of enterprise capabilities that listeners should be considering.
So in my mind, there are 5 categories of capabilities really that you need for this. Regardless of which of the 5 layers that we spoke about, from data stores and metadata services, they need to first of all work or be able to access any and all of the infrastructures that you as an organization want to work with, because you have them today or because you're going to have them in the future. So it needs to be ready for the future, however you decide to go and deploy your data and infrastructure. Secondly, you need to have the tools, the capabilities to create this data fabric. And the crux of a data fabric is this metadata layer that we spoke about. You need to be able to bring in metadata from across your whole enterprise, connecting to any and all of the systems that you have to tease out the structure, but also to show what the current pathways between these various systems and applications are. An enterprise data lineage solution. You need to have consistency in how you apply data security and governance across all of those infrastructures that we just spoke about before. And you need to finally have the ability to either bring the data into a central location or to leave the data exactly where it is and simply access it in a federated manner, a zero copy approach. So that takes care of the infrastructure, heterogeneous infrastructure, the data fabric. You will at some point, for reasons perhaps of performance, for reasons of security, want to bring your data, your crucial data, together in a single data store. And that data store, so that it can handle both structured as well as unstructured data, and so that it can be a single copy accessible from many different engines. A lakehouse is an ideal choice for it. It's that ideal combination between a data warehouse and a data lake. It has all kinds of benefits of not having to copy your data. You can have that single copy of your data accessible to many different engines. And you can also from there share your data with systems beyond whatever the platform is that you choose. The fourth component is across all of this, on all these infrastructures, accessible with the data fabric, so you can feed in a data lakehouse. You must be able to consider real-time and streaming data as part of all of it. So a data lakehouse is not static. As we mentioned before, it's like fraud is something that's active. You need to be able to act on real-time data in order to identify fraud and stop it right there and then. You can't wait for an overnight batch to actually load. So all of this needs to work with real-time data so that you can finally, and this is the fifth and last component, you can drive enterprise AI, either to use it in order to accelerate and to streamline any and all of the previous steps that we spoke about, or so that you as an organization can deploy, develop, and operate your own enterprise AI. And that's for use cases both inside as well as outside your organization, be able to grow your business, be able to optimize your business, or be able to protect your business. If you have those 5 components, or if you can point to your technology and say it can do all these 5 things, then you have the tools in order to make a good data fabric, to make a great data lakehouse, and to implement AI based on trusted data. If you fail on any of those 5, or if you don't have them, you really need to consider what risk that poses to your business.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. I mean, the things that you're talking about make such sense for every organization too. You know, unified control across everything, unified security, data privacy and sovereignty, right? Because you need, especially as we move into the world of AI, AI sovereignty is huge here, especially here in the European market. Hybrid and multi-cloud consistency, which I know that you guys have worked hard on that at Cloudera. Elastic enterprise scale, balanced performance, and functional breadth, right? It is possible to build a data fabric with a few vendors, maybe not entirely one, but the more that you can get from one organization in one place, all managed centrally without having to put pieces together, the better off it's going to be for the enterprise. So, again, I really think that Cloudera has sort of arisen for a time such as this. You have worked towards this moment and kind of quietly, I think, built a lot of these things around a single solution. And I think the world needs to understand that what you've got.
Thank you. Yes, we've worked very hard. We've worked on innovating ourselves. We worked through acquisition of some organizations to provide critical components so we can deliver what we deliver. The vision and strategy that we have as an organization, that stands solid. It is the market that is now catching up and really making this the perfect opportunity for Cloudera to shine. You gave an example there of sovereign cloud and sovereign data. Digital sovereignty in and of itself, absolutely, it's incredibly important. Certainly in Europe, I think any country or region that's got very strong data privacy regulation. The nice thing about it is, from our technology perspective, there is nothing we need to do for Cloudera's platform to work on AWS's EU sovereign cloud. It is the same technology, it is the same functionality, just deployed on a different infrastructure. But for organizations that need to have these capabilities, need to have sovereign cloud so they can have sovereign data, so they can have sovereign AI, our platform is the ideal choice, because it gives you the freedom of choice to mix and match the infrastructures, to deploy your data in one place, but actually bring the AI, bring the analytics to it, rather than having your data copied somewhere else. And that is a degree of freedom that organizations have not had in the past with their data and analytics capabilities. Now they can make choices of where to deploy based on business imperatives. Does it need to be cost effective? Does it need to be resilient, performant? I've got customers that are talking about, I need to have my data and analytics deployed to where it brings the lowest carbon footprint. You can, because with Cloudera you have that choice. The thing is, one team's choice of best possible combination is different from another team's choice. It's different today than it's going to be in 3 months' time. With Cloudera, you have the ability to move certainly your workloads, perhaps also your data if you need to, if circumstances change. You have the ability to move and roll with whatever the world is going to throw at us next, so that we can stay compliant, that we can stay in line with our regulation, yet also innovate and take advantage of AI in order to help our businesses drive forward.
Wim, we've covered a lot of ground today. For our listeners' sake, where do you recommend they begin? It can sound complicated, but is there a simple way to move forward towards a data fabric architecture?
I think the first step to take is get an inventory of your data systems, their metadata, and how it is all connected. Get an enterprise view of the landscape that you have for your data and metadata. That will show you how things are flowing. From there, you can then make a start to fill that metadata layer, to fill that data catalog, to address the areas that need addressing, and to identify the data sources that are critical in order for you to deliver your next use case and strategic objectives. But it all starts with knowing your data and how it is connected. And that's where we can start with Cloudera Data Lineage.
Wim, thank you so much for joining. I'm just gonna say it right here that if for everybody that's listening, if you want to do AI, don't try and do it without a data fabric architecture. It's going to come back and haunt you. It's going to break. I think this is the time to, if you haven't already, move towards that data fabric architecture. And Wim, thanks for all of the insight that you have brought here today. This is a rich set of information. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for making it possible. It was great to speak to you.
And I just want to say too, if you want to connect with Wim, connect with him on LinkedIn. You can find out more information about the Cloudera Data Fabric at cloudera.com. There's plenty of information there. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place. Let's continue this conversation. And thank you for joining the Digital Analyst podcast. We will see you again in a couple of weeks.
The Digital Analyst.